Mid-July 2024, after 14 years of silence, a cutting-edge expedition descends to Titanic's first-class deck, determined only to document, not disturb. Hours before resurfacing, the team rediscovers the famous Diana of Versailles statue, lost since 1986, and records the sudden disappearance of the ship's iconic bow railing, immortalized in cinema, now ripped away in mere days. These shocks force haunting questions, with 2 million images revealing Titanic's rapid decay. Why is the world racing to capture what the depths are destroying? The answers start on the day everything changed. July 12, 2024, the MV Dino Chuest slipped its moorings in Providence, Rhode Island, bound for a patch of the North Atlantic Sea, 350 miles off Newfoundland. The crew, a blend of RMS Titanic Incorporated veterans, marine imaging engineers, and deep-sea historians, gathered on deck as the city faded behind them. 14 years had passed since the last sanctioned expedition set course for Titanic's resting place. This time, every detail of the voyage was mapped with precision. The ship's manifest listed a 20-day mission window, enough time to reach the wreck, deploy equipment, and complete the most thorough documentation ever attempted at these depths. The team prepared for a descent of 2.5 miles, over 13,000 feet, into a world of total darkness and crushing pressure. Precision. The North Atlantic in mid-July offered a narrow window of calm, but the environment remained unpredictable. Each member of the command team, from navigation officers to remotely operated vehicle pilots, carried the weight of both history and expectation. Unpredictable. The MV Dino Chuest was outfitted for the task, its reinforced hull and custom launch bays designed for repeated deep-sea deployments. On board, the dual remotely operated vehicles, each loaded with advanced cameras and sensor arrays, were checked and rechecked in the hours before arrival at the site. Outfitted. As the ship crossed into international waters, legal observers documented every procedure. The mission's scope was clear: no artifact recovery, only documentation. This was a response to mounting scrutiny over deep-sea exploration following the previous year's submersible disaster. No recovery. Every protocol was signed off, every safeguard in place. The crew knew the risks, but also the urgency. Titanic's remains were vanishing faster than anyone had predicted. The 2024 expedition was not just another dive, it was a race against time, with the fate of the world's most famous shipwreck hanging in the balance. Race 2 remotely operated vehicles, each bristling with the most advanced camera systems ever sent to Titanic's depth, slipped into the black water just after midnight on July 15th. These machines, engineered by Marine Imaging Technologies and Titanic, Honor and Glory, brought a new kind of vision to the wreck. Their sensor arrays swept the seabed at 65,000 resolution, capturing every rivet, every rusticle, every fragment of the ship's once grand interior. Custom lighting rigs cut through the silt and darkness, revealing details lost to human eyes for more than a century. Magnetometer sweeps, a first for Titanic, mapped the hidden patterns of metal beneath the sediment, tracing the outlines of objects too small or too buried for previous missions to detect. The operators worked in silence, eyes locked on banks of high-definition monitors. Each ROV pilot performed slow, deliberate passes over the hull and debris field, following grid patterns designed to leave no corner undocumented. Safety was never an afterthought. Every maneuver was checked against real-time telemetry and environmental data, with legal observers logging each protocol. During one tense moment, a power fault at 13,000 feet sent a jolt through the control room. Video feeds went dark for nearly a minute as the team executed an emergency ascent. Another time, A sudden silt cloud from a thruster pause forced a halt in operations, the pilots waiting out the murk to avoid a blind collision with the fragile wreck. Over 20 days, the two vehicles produced 2 million images, the most exhaustive visual archive ever assembled for Titanic. No artifact was touched or moved. The mission's strict documentation-only policy meant every photograph, every scan, carried the weight of finality. For the first time, the entire site, from bow to stern, was recorded in detail, so fine that even the smallest inscriptions on silverware and the faintest cracks in steel could be studied. This imaging arsenal didn't just capture the Titanic's remains, it preserved them, frame by frame, against the relentless march of decay. In the final hours of the 2024 expedition, a single photograph from 1986 became the key to a search that had eluded experts for nearly 4 decades. The Diana of Versailles statue, once the pride of Titanic's first-class lounge, had vanished into the debris field during the chaos of the sinking. For years, its fate was a mystery, its only confirmed sighting a grainy image captured by Robert Ballard's remotely operated vehicle nearly 40 years earlier. Researchers pored over deck plans, survivor accounts, and scattered expedition logs, but the statue remained lost beneath layers of silt and time. James Penker, a researcher with RMS Titanic Incorporated, made Diana his obsession. Armed with the original Ballard photograph and the latest high-resolution mapping data, he spent the last 48 hours of the mission directing a methodical grid search across the debris field. Every pass of the remotely operated vehicle was slow and deliberate, guided by subtle clues, a faint outline here, a glint of bronze there, cross-referenced with models of how the ship broke apart. Penker's field notes described the hunt as his white whale, a chase that shaped the entire team's priorities as the mission clock ticked down. The breakthrough came late on August 12th. The remotely operated vehicle's lights swept across a patch of sediment, revealing a form half buried but unmistakable. Diana, face up, her classical features still visible after 112 years in darkness. Ornate details, her bow, her flowing robes, stood out against the muted backdrop of decaying steel and scattered artifacts. The bronze, though streaked with greenish patina and crusted with marine growth, had survived the ocean's assault better than most of the ship's ironwork. The statue's position, preserved by a protective layer of silt, kept its surface details remarkably intact. For the team, the moment was electric. After decades of speculation, here was proof that Titanic's most iconic first-class artifact had endured. Penker, who had studied the statue in museum replicas and archival photos since childhood, described the find as a kind of homecoming, not just for himself, but for everyone invested in Titanic's story. The rediscovery triggered a wave of excitement among marine historians and art conservators, who now faced a new question. Should Diana remain where she lay or be brought back to the surface? The debate ignited almost immediately. Some argued that recovering Diana would preserve a unique link to Titanic's lost world, giving future generations a tangible connection to the ship's artistry and ambition. Others warned that disturbing the statue would violate the sanctity of a maritime grave, risking both ethical and physical harm. The statue's condition, while stable in the deep, could deteriorate rapidly if exposed to changing pressure and temperature. Lifting Diana would require custom tools, slow ascent protocols, and months of desalination, each step fraught with risk. For now, Diana rests where she fell, her gaze fixed upward through the darkness. The 2024 expedition captured her in thousands of images, every curve and detail mapped for science and posterity. Yet the question remains: is her true legacy best served by recovery, or by letting her remain a silent witness to the ship's final hours? The answer, as the team prepared to leave the site, was anything but clear. July 29th, 2024. The ROV team's monitors flickered with a view no one expected. A 15-foot section of Titanic's portside bow railing, once a symbol of the ship's grandeur, was gone. Just 48 hours earlier, multi-beam sonar and high-resolution cameras had swept the same stretch of deck. The rail, immortalized by the famous "I'm flying" scene in James Cameron's film, stood intact, a familiar outline at the edge of the forecastle. Now it was missing, leaving a clean gap along the bow's curve. The discovery triggered an immediate response on the surface. Imaging technician Thomasina Ray called for a halt to all forward surveys. The team began a forensic review, cross-referencing timestamps, navigation logs, and every frame from the July 27th scan. There was no evidence of collision, no record of ROV thruster surges or mechanical mishap. Environmental logs confirmed stable currents and no seismic activity. The loss had happened in silence, between routine passes, as if the ship had shed another piece of itself while no one was watching. ROV 327 traced the missing section to the seabed, directly beneath the prow. The detached rail lay undisturbed, its ornate stanchions and curved handrail still recognizable. Structured light scans and GIS corrected coordinates from 3D at depth mapped its exact position. The fracture at the break was clean, with no signs of fresh impact or mechanical shear. Metallurgical analysis pointed to corrosion fatigue, decades of metal-eating bacteria, pressure cycles, and salt water slowly hollowing out the iron until gravity finished the job. For the imaging team, the loss was more than technical data. The railing had stood for over a century, surviving storms, salvage attempts, and the relentless crush of the deep. Now, in less than 2 days, it had surrendered to forces no human could halt. Every detail was documented. Before and after overlays, laser scans, and close-ups of the exposed deck edge. The split-screen comparison, July 27th, rail intact, July 29th, rail gone, became instant proof of Titanic's accelerating decay. This was not just a relic. For millions, the bow rail was an icon, its silhouette burned into memory by film, photographs, and history books. Its sudden disappearance left a hole not just in the ship, but in the story the world tells about Titanic. The urgency was undeniable. If a feature so prominent could vanish without warning, what else might be lost before the next expedition? For the team, the evidence was clear. Titanic's first-class sections were dissolving faster than science had predicted. The race to document what remained had become a battle against time, and against the deep itself. In the cold, silent world, 2.5 miles beneath the Atlantic, Titanic's hull is under siege by an enemy no one can see. Metal-eating bacteria, thriving in the darkness, are consuming the ship faster than anyone imagined. Corrosion scientists on the 2024 expedition tracked the advance of these microbes using high-powered microscopes and precise thickness gauges. Their focus is the rusticles, stalactite-like formations that dangle from every exposed seam and rivet. These growths, once thought to be harmless, are now recognized as the signature of relentless decay. Comparing images from 2022 and 2024, the team measured clear losses in the hull's steel. Some areas around the bow and first-class deck thinned by nearly 1 millimeter in just 2 years, a rate that once took a decade. Close-ups reveal how colonies of Halomonas titanici and other bacteria bore through solid metal, leaving behind hollow shells where supports and railings once stood strong. The collapse of the 15-foot port side railing, documented in perfect detail, is only the most visible sign. Microfractures now spider across the deck plates, and once solid bulkheads show new holes that were absent in earlier surveys. Corrosion specialist Dr. Evan Kovac, working with 3D at depth, analyzed the data and delivered a stark warning. At current rates, the outer bow framework could fail completely within 20 to 40 years. The first-class sections, with their ornate ironwork and decorative panels, are especially vulnerable. Each rusticle is a tiny factory, converting Titanic's steel into flaking iron oxide and feeding the next wave of microbial invaders. The process is both chemical and biological, accelerated by deep sea pressure and the constant wash of cold, oxygen-rich water. Every new scan tells the same story. Holes have widened by up to 15% in some locations since 2022, and up to 8 millimeters of extra thinning has been recorded at critical joints. The high-resolution mosaic assembled by the expedition shows the damage in unforgiving clarity. What was once a proud liner is dissolving, piece by piece, into the seabed. For the scientists, the urgency is real. If documentation lags behind decay, the world's most famous shipwreck could lose its most iconic features within a single generation. The clock is not just ticking, it is accelerating. RMS Titanic Incorporated has set its sights on the Diana of Versailles statue for the 2025 recovery mission, reigniting a conflict that extends far beyond the technical challenge of lifting bronze from the abyss. Time. On one side, supporters within the company and the museum world argue that time is running out. The accelerating decay, driven by metal-eating bacteria and relentless pressure, threatens to erase Diana's features forever. For them, the statue is more than an artifact. It is a surviving link to Titanic's vanished world, a chance to rescue memory from oblivion. James Penker, who led the search that found Diana, describes the rediscovery as deeply personal. He has outlined recovery protocols and volunteered to oversee conservation, insisting that documentation alone cannot halt the ocean's destruction. Gravesite. Yet the prospect of removal has drawn fierce resistance. Maritime ethicists, museum curators, and descendants of Titanic's victims warn that any disturbance of the site risks violating a gravesite where more than 1,500 people lost their lives. They point to international precedents, the Lusitania, the Royal Oak, and other shipwrecks protected from salvage by law and custom. The UNESCO Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage, along with the 2019 US and UK Titanic Agreement, both urge restraint. One museum curator, speaking to the BBC, called each artifact a memorial in place. Removing it is an erasure, not a rescue. Legal questions swirl around the mission. RMS Titanic Incorporated holds salvor in possession status under US Admiralty law, but every new recovery requires federal court approval. The Diana plan will be scrutinized by judges, heritage groups, and foreign governments, each weighing the risks of irreversible loss against the duty to preserve history. Critics warn that artifacts brought to the surface, no matter how carefully handled, can end up in private hands or disappear into poorly regulated collections, severing their connection to the public and to the site itself. But supporters counter with economic and educational arguments. Public exhibitions, they say, keep Titanic's story alive for new generations, funding further research and conservation. Even among scientists and historians, there is no consensus. The fate of Diana now hangs in a legal and ethical limbo, with the world watching as the 2025 mission approaches. The choices made in the coming months will not just determine the statue's future. They may set the standard for how the world treats all underwater graves and the memories they hold. Running out. In just 20 days, The 2024 expedition produced over 2 million images, capturing every detail of Titanic's first-class section before it fades forever. Discovery. The rediscovery of the Diana of Versailles statue, lost for 38 years, and the sudden collapse of a 15-foot portside bow railing between July 27th and July 29th proved the wreck is changing faster than anyone expected. Debate. Despite breakthrough imaging, the long-term fate of artifacts like Diana remains undecided, with official plans to recover her in 2025 sparking fierce debate. Unknown. The full scope of structural decay and how long the first-class area will survive are questions science cannot yet answer. More loss. What is certain is that each survey reveals more loss and more urgency. Preservation. The evidence shows time is running out for both preservation and memory. Vanishing. Titanic's story is still being written, but its most iconic features are vanishing before our eyes.